Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kevin and I am here to be discussing, as part of the Computers and Society module, the notion that technology determines social structure and cultural values in society. In this presentation, I'll be laying out exactly what this motion is talking about and giving a few key examples I found which really demonstrate this proposition. So let's begin with a few definitions, shall we? On this slide, you can see a clear-cut definition of what social structure is, or at least according to Britannica.com, but surely all of us have an idea of what it is to begin with. In layman's terms, social structure is how our society and the societies around us are organized. Whether it be the government or religious authority of society, or the various communities of people within said society, it is how these groups interact with one another that defines how a society is structured. As we will see, technology not only has influenced this structure, but determined it. The other main buzzwords of the argument are those of cultural values. You don't need me to tell you that different communities, different groups, different nationalities do things in different ways. So the way people are brought up in and interact with their societies shape their cultural values. As we'll now go on to the examples of technology's impact on this and of course social structure, these cultural values are indeed affected by the continual march of technology. So, a prime example of how this technology has determined a change, especially in social structure, is a collection of events between 2010 and 2012 known as the Arab Spring. It was a general rise in public dissatisfaction with governments in the Arab world. It suddenly erupted into unprecedentedly large amounts of civil unrest. The rise of social media, in this case the main technological factor, enabled demonstrations to grow and spread dramatically. Protesters would organize on sites like Facebook, while brutality by police and government forces would be broadcast across the world on sites like YouTube. In fact, the influence of this technology was so worrying to governments that some enacted bans and blockages of internet usage. While the civil disobedience did lead to some peaceful transitions of power, most notably in Tunisia, large-scale violence resulted in other nations, the obvious examples being Syria, Libya. If that doesn't show technology determining a shift in social structure, I don't know what is. Now here's an example which focuses more on the influence technology can and did have on cultural values. Mpesa, now a subsidiary of Vodafone, is a system whereby mobile phone users can transfer money from one user to another in a way that is easy, safe, and more importantly, traceable. In countries like Kenya, where eventually an astounding 70% of adults were soon using Mpesa, and where corruption and money in politics was a real problem, it changed the cultural landscape, and for the better. John Kithongo, one of Kenya's leading anti-corruption activists, praised its democratizing effect, stating that Kenyans are witnessing a transformation in the way people relate to their governments. M-Pesa has quickly become a facet of everyday life and culture for many Kenyans, and as the company spreads across many countries in the developing world, it will influence the way many others live. Now, in a democracy, elections are important. They decide not only the leaders of a country, but how the country will change for the years to come. Social structures can shift with every ballot that's counted, and cultural values can determine which vote goes to whom. So, naturally, if one influences an election in one direction or another, they determine the course of the country, socially and culturally. Cambridge Analytica, a British consulting firm, aimed to do exactly that not long ago, and there is evidence to suggest that they succeeded. Using technology, more specifically social media, even more specifically Facebook, Cambridge Analytica used clever tactics to gather the personal data of a staggering 87 million people. With this information, these Facebook users were targeted with personalized advertisements, which pulled them towards a desired political leaning. It was only once a whistleblower came forward that this massive scandal was revealed and became international news, which changed mindsets towards social media for years to come. Cambridge Analytica may be no more these days, but the impact they left is huge. I could talk for hours about how this ties into the rise of fake news and distrust towards mainstream media, but it is clear to see how easily technology can determine the values one holds, not to mention the impact their influence on elections has had on social structures. Now finally, here's a big one. Globalization. There is no doubt that due to technological advances, the world has become increasingly connected. One could argue dependent on one another. Long-standing cultural values are being tested with new technology. Not long ago, it would have been considered a childish fantasy to be able to see and talk with anyone across the entire globe at the push of a button. Some have even gone so far as to say that modern technology is causing global religious values to falter for the first time in millennia. Social media and its truly worldwide impact on mental health, the workplace, and of course, as we've seen, politics, are all well documented. Whereas in the past, social structures of divides between the masses and the elites dominated. These days, anyone, anywhere can send a tweet to the head of the United Nations if they feel so inclined. Last year, it was estimated that over half the world now uses the internet. Half the world. As long as technology continues to advance, it will continue to alter social structures and cultural values. All right. Thank you all so very much for watching this presentation. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.